5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
You're listening to Working Forward, presented by Symetra. In this limited podcast series, hosted by Todd Zen, we explore the future of work from a variety of viewpoints and discuss the challenges and opportunities ahead.
Hello, and welcome to the latest installment of the Working Forward podcast. My name is Todd Zen, and I am your host, and thank you for joining us. We've got what I think is going to be an excellent conversation today. We are going to be focusing on the sales rep perspective. Ultimately, we really want to learn from folks that are out on the street selling our products and really leading the efforts in how to position employee benefits, how to help employers prepare for the future of work. And if you're a longtime listener, I think you know that I am in the product space. So I design products. And what I think is interesting is I absolutely could not do what I do without the insights of our sales reps. And we've got two excellent ones here today. I think they're going to be able to share the perspective of what they do to meet employer needs, the way that they partner with our brokers to deliver great solutions, and share with you really a lot about how employers are future-proofing their business and designing benefit plans. So thanks for joining us for this conversation. I want to bring in our first guest. Joining us here is Paul Monaco. Paul, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. Happy to be here.
Can you share with the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been with Symetra since 2015. And I moved to the North Texas market from Cleveland, Ohio, where I spent my previous 10 years with a couple of other carriers. And so I've been here for most of the journey.
That's excellent.
I worked the Dallas, Fort Worth, and Oklahoma markets.
That's fantastic. Well, I think our audience will benefit from your veteran perspectives and also the fact that you've seen a lot and you've seen this change. So welcome. And glad to have you. So our next guest is Hunt Dalton. So Hunt, hello, and same question for you. Can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Hey, Todd. Thanks for inviting me on. I'm Hunt Dalton. So I'm down in Atlanta, Georgia. I covered Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi for Symetra. And so I was looking at the numbers earlier. I'm coming up on 3 years at Symetra, and then a total of about 6 in the industry. So even though I have a couple of years, I still feel brand new in comparison to legends like Paul.
Well, excellent. Well, I can't wait to get into it. So I'm just going to dive right in. And Paul, I'm going to ask you first. Can you share a bit about your journey through the employee benefit space? You've clearly been doing this a while. I'm sure the industry's changed quite a bit as you've gone on your journey as well. So would love to hear your thoughts on your experiences in your career thus far.
Yeah, it's been a fun and exciting journey. I'll say that it has changed significantly, and I don't think it's a surprise to many in our business that I didn't go to college intending or thinking I was going to major in becoming an insurance group rep. Just wasn't something that was on the radar, but it's a unique industry. And the reason I'm in it is a family's connection. I grew up in an insurance family, and so it was a great talk that I thank my father for every day to get me into this unique space, though, where you're selling stuff that you believe in. And then it's also a fun industry. It's constantly evolving, constantly challenging you. So I took a job in 2005 right out of college, and they shipped me off to Cleveland, Ohio, to a unworked territory. And I learned a lot, right? But I will say that when I went out there the first day on the job, there was that was back in the day with group offices. So you'd bring cases in, we'd have manila folders. You'd rate your cases, you'd get your rate write-ups. It was a rep intensive process. And again, it was also limited markets back then. A lot of brokers were still sending RFPs via fax. And, if you're dealing with a fax machine, right, you're not going to fax it to 20 carriers. And so it was a unique space, a lot of face-to-face, obviously, the pandemic had some changes on the industry, but the industry was already shifting to a lot of phone calls, virtual, podcast, for example, right? And so from there, it's evolved, and it's been fun to watch. I will say that it allows us to be more effective and efficient with our time. However, it is important, I think, as a rep to keep that human touch and that interaction.
That's great. Thank you for that. So, Hun, let me pivot over to you. You are obviously newer to the space, and I'm interested, as a young up-and-comer like yourself, I think you probably could have chosen a lot of different paths in a lot of different industries. So how did you find group insurance, and what do you think about it so far?
Yeah, so I was supposed to be a fourth-generation orthopedic surgeon, and was heading down that path, physics, pre-med, and got into it and said, okay, well, I definitely don't want to go to school for 8 more years. And so I was just trying to do med device sales was the direction I was heading, and did a sales role play in college just out of nowhere, and ended up having the judge be an RVP of the Northeast for an insurance carrier, and they asked me to interview. So I kind of never knew anyone in insurance, didn't know anything about it, and took the interview. Honestly, took it as interview practice, and was going through the interview process, and everyone I met I liked, and basically fell into the job. And going into the first day of work, I texted the other trainee, hey, do you have any clue what we're doing? And he said, no, I have no clue. Neither of us had any clue. And figuring it out every day. But it still took me about 3 years to explain to my dad what I did for work.
That's fantastic. I tried to explain it to my wife all the time, and she does not know, and it's been 20 plus years. So I get it. It's hard to explain. Insurance is a basic concept, but we're in a very particular corner of it, selling through employers and also partnering very closely with brokers, with group benefit brokers. And that actually segues into my next question. I would love, maybe Paul, you could opine on this one first. I think it's, relationship building with broker partners is essential. It's really the core of this business, as I understand it, from a sales and distribution standpoint. So can you share a little bit, as somebody who's been doing this a while, how do you build those effective relationships? How do you grow them? How do you, become a trusted partner to your broker partners?
Yeah, well, you said an interesting word, trust. Doing this long enough, and again, brokers and my top broker consultant partners are always saying, they're buying the rep, right? They're buying the person, they're buying the brand. It is fantastic to have a company that lines up with your ethics and your morals and the things you believe in. But at the end of the day, it is about a relationship, to your point. If you don't have the relationship with your broker and consultant in a trusted relationship, then you are just a number, right? It's a commodity market. And so the goal for me is always to not become commoditized, to be a trusted resource. And so I go into every relationship as part of his or her business. And I want to say, look, here is what I can bring to you, but let's partner on these things, to bring the right solutions. Because from day one, I don't want to feel like just send me the quote. I want to be in on the strategic piece, because if I can help you win business, that's amazing, right? But we definitely want to help you keep and retain your business when you move it to Symetra. So I think the biggest thing is developing that trust. And the only way to develop it is, consistent investment in the relationship on a personal level, getting to know those individuals, getting to know what's important to them, and having them know about you. I think a lot of times in business, we hide our personal side, our family or what's important to us. And most of my relationships know pretty well where I stand on almost everything. And so it's been a good path for me.
That's fantastic. So, Hun, same question to you. You're newer at this, but I know you've already formed some really strong relationships. How have you gone about it, and what do you think some of the best practices are?
Yeah, Paul alluded to it earlier. COVID changed everything. When I was training, it was before COVID. I had a 9-month training program, and we talked about just dropping into the office, walking around. That's how you meet new people. But my first meeting was the week before COVID started in the industry, my first solo meeting. So literally I spent the next 10 months of the year trying to figure out how to make connections with someone no one had ever heard of via email, via the phone, and everyone was locked down. No one was moving new business. No one needed new carriers. They were worried about protecting what they had. And so it really required getting creative and trying to find ways to bring value, because if they're not used to working with an insurance carrier, they're not used to working with me, there is no brand, there's nothing. And so I have to find a way to differentiate myself and basically show that I can provide value and show that they can trust me, like they know they can trust Paul, but they've known Paul for 10 years. They're meeting me over the phone. And so to be able to bring trust over that timeline was extremely difficult. There's no in-person, it is all email and begging to see if they'll take a call with me. So I think a lot of it really required persistency and availability. I mean, my Apple Watch is my best friend. I've told people that if you call me, I don't miss calls. I'm not doing anything else. It's my first year. If you call me, you're going to get an answer, and I'm going to get it as quick as you can. So I think being reliable and consistent as the new young guy in a virtual world was the only way I could really differentiate myself in the beginning. But now, I mean, the world is starting to get back to that norm a little bit. People want to see you in person. You start to hear comments again. Well, I haven't seen him in 9 months. Haven't heard from him. Not working with him. So I think that in person will never go away. I think it went away for a minute just because of the pandemic and what it required. But every day I'm trying to be available in person and trying to find unique ways to provide value that their relationship, who they've worked with for 20 years, isn't doing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You know, as we've been going on the journey of this podcast and talking about the future of work, we spent a lot of time in the first season talking about the virtual work environment, and maybe not just from a sales context, but this idea of collaborating virtually. And I think it's really interesting. We were talking about how things would just kind of continue that way. And I think it's interesting to hear that pendulum swinging back, especially in the sales business, which again is so about relationships, as you've both already stated. Speaking of trends, I'd love to hear your thoughts on any recent trends you've seen in employee benefits. Obviously the sales trends are getting back to in person, but, maybe it's a benefit, maybe it's just a sort of really anything. It could be a capability, it could be a benefit, it could be a product. But Hunt, maybe I'll start with you. In the last kind of 12, 18 months or so, what have you heard a lot more chatter about, and what do you think is a trend that might be here to stay?
Yeah, I think a really big one that immediately comes to mind is, especially down in the Southeast, we have a lot of legacy products that have just been individual products that have been sold to customers that maybe gave insurance that bad name, where people think that it's just taking advantage of employees. They're just pulling from their paycheck and they never remember they have it. So making sure that we get those products out of the market and replace them with something that provides massive financial value when they need it. And so I know you've been a huge part of that, specifically on our VB products, accident insurance, critical illness, hospital indemnity. Our core focus, making sure we're getting those paying claims more and more, so that employees first remember that they have the benefits, and secondly, that when they remember they have them, that they actually pay. And so I think the huge change in the industry is really that claims integration. People have promised it for so long, but really helping employees file those claims, make it easier to file, making it easier in tough times when they don't really know what to do, and just need help. We're there to take care of employees when they need help. And so making that as easy as possible so that they're making smart financial decisions for their family, and we back them up when they need us. So I think making products more inclusive and cover more circumstances, but also creating easier ways to file claims that employees don't miss out on benefits that they're eligible for.
Well, a product-focused answer certainly warms my heart, so I appreciate it, and appreciate your thoughts. I think they do make a lot of sense. Paul, same question to you. What have you been seeing?
Yeah, I think to kind of piggyback on what Hunt said, the full integration suite of benefits, you can see it firsthand by seeing how many traditional life and disability carriers are investing heavily in the voluntary benefits world. And on the other side, there's a lot of voluntary benefits carriers that are now investing into the life and disability world, because the reality is that having everything with one carrier, a single claim, fully integrated process is a better experience for the employee. It's a better experience for HR. And again, benefits that meet the employee where they are. So to the point about products, right? Those are trends. What is important to individuals? And when, I always remember that when we see a case with 40% participation on a product, I see 40, but I also see 60. And that 60 I see is 60% of people saw no value, right? Or didn't understand the product, or it wasn't right for them. So filling in those gaps, I think, but we, obviously we do a great job of that. So we have a lot of tools at our disposal, and that's a testament to you and your team. But yeah, I think the world is definitely evolving in that the market's going to become a package market.
It's probably hard not to mention technology too. I mean, we mentioned it in one simple solution. I mean, employers want everything to be in one place. They want it to all be automated, all work together. And so, I mean, yes, these product pieces are huge, but also the technology element of it is just getting more and more important every day. There are more APIs being built out that are automating employers' information to the carrier information so that it's directly back and forth and they see automatic decisions from the carrier. And so I would say that's another significant trend where it's everything quick, fast. And I think we've seen that across the entire world. Everyone wants immediate gratification, immediate answers. And so trying to keep up with that normal life expectation is a lot of pressure. And I think we're doing more every single day to match that.
Well, that's great. And actually, that also plays nicely into my next question. And just a quick foundational comment. You both have extraordinarily difficult jobs. It's not easy to be on the road, to be meeting people, to be explaining complex insurance products, to sell. There's a massive amount of competition in this space. So I'm interested in your take, each of you, on what do you think some of the biggest challenges you face in your day-to-day? Well, what are those things, and how do you overcome them? Paul, maybe you could go first on this one.
Yeah, I think it's probably, we talked about all the technology, and I think technology is fantastic, but it presents more partners, right? And more people that you need to integrate with. And so that in my day-to-day is tough. And I know as a company, we're trying to address all of those things, and you can't be everything to everybody. So, part of the challenges that I have and what I'm trying to do is pick my spots better. Trying to, we live in a world where if you get told no 91 or 92% of the time, you are exceptional. And that's hard for individuals that are wired like me, that I don't like to lose. I like to win. I think I should win everything. But the reality of the situation is, 92 times out of 100, I'm getting a no, right? And so those are challenges. That's a mental challenge for me personally. But I will say that the hardest challenge from a business perspective is making sure that all the integrations line up. And then there's obviously, you just mentioned, it's a commoditized market. And that goes back, though, to my broker consultant discussion, right? Having good partners, I think, doesn't make that commodity issue as much. But I do have, some places where it's a different play. And so that's a challenge as well, because you don't feel quite as like you're selling from a needs-based, solution-based sale. So I don't love the commodity sale personally.
That makes a lot of sense. Your comments kind of remind me of the old baseball adage of if you're succeed 1 out of 3 times, they'll put you in the Hall of Fame. It sounds like if you succeed 1 out of every 10 times, we'd put you in the Sales Hall of Fame. So I think that just highlights how difficult this is and how challenging it is to get to that place where you're making these sales. Hunt, how about you? What do you find most challenging in your day-to-day?
I would say they're breaking through the noise. There is so much information now because everything's so readily available and so much quicker. So Paul talked about how he used to drive to offices, drive proposals to offices. It doesn't happen anymore. And so the amount of information that's flowing to our broker partners, to clients, is massive. And so brokers, I can't even imagine what their inbox looks like, just getting hammered at all different angles by every single piece of information. And it could be extremely important, like what Paul and I have to say. They definitely should read those. But I'm sure they get emails from someone who's totally unrelated to their business. I get emails all the time asking about my broker clients. I'm like, do you even know what I do? And so the amount of noise that goes to brokers, I think it's really, really difficult to get them to focus in on what actually will differentiate their business. And it's not the same answer for everyone. And so getting enough time with someone to figure out what their needs are, to figure out what actually is important to that individual client, I think is really difficult. To be able to get enough time on their radar. People are going a million miles per hour now. And so getting them to focus on what we believe will differentiate it and change their client's experience, it's very hard to get that focus.
Well, that's great. And actually, I want to keep the dialogue on the broker and kind of return to almost where we started, right? Which is really the importance of the broker, the importance of that partnership. And I know Hunt and Paul, you guys provide great experiences for our broker partners on a daily basis. But I'd love it if each of you could highlight an example, without giving broker names or case names, maybe just some, generalized examples of, a time when you provided an exceptional customer service for a broker, and maybe highlight a little bit about what that looked like. Hunt, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, I would say stuff always happens. No matter how on top of a client a broker is, an account manager is, an HR department is, stuff happens. So specifically, I work on a lot of our airline business, and we had some miscommunication with HR that they were allowed to enroll pilots in disability insurance whenever they wanted, whoever wanted, come on. And so there are limitations put into those enrollment timelines so that people aren't taking advantage of the plan. And so we had about 100 pilots, and a pilot actually who was about to go out on disability and most likely pass away in the future was set up to be denied benefits because they had been completely mismanaging their enrollment information. And so when they'd asked us to make an exception for this one pilot who needed coverage, and he did nothing wrong. He signed up for coverage and thought he was covered for years. And so they asked us to make an exception for this one pilot, and we had no issues doing it. But if we're going to make an exception for that one pilot, we have to do it for everyone this happened to. And so we went retroactively and waived all eligibility requirements for all 100 pilots, made sure this pilot got paid his disability claim, and then unfortunately paid his life claim as well later down the road. So because of what that broker did, fighting for their client, us fighting for our client as well. So I say fighting's the wrong word. We worked together as a partnership to make sure the client got covered, and we covered the right client and made sure that this totally innocent pilot beneficiary got a very significant paycheck to take care of their family, whatever they needed. Those claim payouts multiple generations. So yes, our industry is very hard, but when you have experiences like that, because of what I did, what our claims examiner did, we changed someone's life and probably a whole family's life.
It's a fantastic example, and that really gets at the heart and core of what we do at Symetra. We're here to support people in these challenging moments and provide this level of financial protection. So I think that's an excellent example of that shining through in a very particular and certainly very challenging situation. Paul, same question to you. I know you've got a lot of examples of these as well. Any that you'd like to share?
Yeah, just to piggyback on it, and I say it a lot, is we do, like Margaret says, do the right thing every time, right? That's our motto. And, we walk it. I agree. When I have those situations come up, again, we're doing the right thing, whether that is, retroing a contract or waiving things. I just like the way we look at things, and then we're constantly doing that. But, different from what Hunt was saying, I think our account management structure with our account managers, and selfishly, I feel like I have an amazing account manager, two that I work with all the time in Dallas and Oklahoma. But the way that they are connected with the client at a personal level, one example was one of our larger clients here in Dallas had a very significant death at the company, right? A very, very tenured leader. And you know, within like 2 hours, my account manager was able to mobilize EAP, send services out to the employer, help them through the claim, get the beneficiaries connected with Beneficiary Connect. And again, no one calls us when they're having a good day in our business. No one calls our claim shop feeling good unless they're having a baby, right? That's about the extent of it. So we just have to keep that in mind, and I think we do. And so being connected, that's something that you do for a client or a broker, and they're like, that's a partner, and everybody looks good because of it. But again, at the end of the day, we're not doing it to look good. I always tell people, like, we're doing it because that's what our mission is. Like, do the right thing every time. So that's my piece.
That's excellent. And I want to highlight some more examples. I just think they're very powerful and impactful. And what I would reinforce from what Paul and Hunt, I think, said very, very well is that employee benefits matter. They're important. In some cases, they're the only significant life insurance somebody has. Disability insurance is essential for people facing challenges in their life. So these things matter. And also, the interesting thing is that a successful employee benefit program and solution is not a one-size-fits-all approach. In fact, it is almost always a bespoke approach that is something that is learned and built based on very particular needs. So I guess I'd love it if you could share some highlights of effective employee benefit solutions. You both have designed great packages, sold things that have made differences to employers. Any success stories you can think of or to highlight around, really maybe further to the examples you just gave, right? But just, effective employee benefit solutions and how they make a difference. Paul, maybe we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, I think the enhancements, probably the biggest thing I saw in being able to sell something that was unique and different was the enhancements we made to our voluntary benefits suite. Hunt had mentioned you're dealing with a market that a little archaic at times. The lion's share of premium is with companies that have been doing it over a very long time. And, so from the perspective of when we first came out with our critical illness, when we came out with Symetra Health, it allows us to shift the discussion to the medical. And that is 90% of what the broker's focus is. Let's not sugarcoat it, right? We're 10% if we're lucky. And so from that perspective, shifting the conversation to solving issues revolving around their healthcare, coming up with unique solutions based off of their medical spend on our critical illness policy to show them, look, we can cover some things that are prevalent in your particular industry. A great example is some of the work we've done up with the tribal business up in Oklahoma. Again, a whole different set of needs in the tribal markets, and we are able to bring unique things there. And so being able to tailor those discussions, and now with Symetra Health, really being able to be part of the strategy for the high deductible healthcare plans to give employees a softer landing, when they have to hit those deductibles. So that's been where I've found the most success, being unique and tailoring stuff.
Yeah, that's great, Paul. I love that focus on underserved markets. That's very much a part of our corporate DNA as well. And the success we've had with tribes to provide important benefits that are not readily available to them, I think is a great example as well of how we can reach people that need our products and design unique solutions. Hunt, how about you?
Yeah, this one actually was right at my first year in the industry. I was working with a new young producer, and they just won a new client, and not a huge client, but they did not have a significant employee benefits package. They had a lot of those old individual policies locked in there. They were extremely expensive. And we came in and decreased rates. I think crazy numbers were like someone decreased the rate 75%. So it was crazy savings for the employees, some major benefits there. But as part of the offering, I talked with the producer, and we went to the owner of the company and said, what do you think about adding a life insurance benefit? I mean, for those who don't know, adding a $10,000 life insurance benefit for all your employees is pennies on the dollar. And so for extremely low cost, you can add this little bit of extra savings for your employees. And so pricing it out and presenting it to the owner of the company we were able to convince him that this was worthwhile to add as a benefit for his employees. Employees didn't even really know they had it. It kind of just was included in their package. And within the first 3 months, they had a death of an employee who had no other benefits, had nothing, and their significant other got $10,000 and changes the entire process. They now don't have to worry about finances while they're mourning the loss of a loved one. And so just due to the partnership and due to just talking about it and saying, this isn't that expensive, let's do it, change someone's life. And so when things like that come up because of what a broker did, I usually try to at least text them and say, hey, just FYI, what you did changed someone's life.
That's fantastic. That's a great, to be able to highlight something like that and make the broker feel good about a great outcome. I think that's fantastic. So I have one final question for you both, and it ties to a couple things here. So first, as I mentioned earlier to you both, and you may already be aware, our theme is the future of work. So I have to ask you a question about the future. The second reason I'm asking you is more of a selfish reason. You both said some kind things about our products, but I would really reinforce that we can't build successful products without the viewpoints and feedback that me and my team get from both of you and your colleagues around what's happening in the market, right? You're helping us discern and figure out the type of products we need to build, not for today, but for 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road. That's how this has to work to be successful. So I'm going to ask you both, what do you guys see as the future of employee benefits? It could be a product, it could be service, it could be just really just how we handle our clients. It could be anything, but if it's a product, that's great because I can get to work on it. But Hunt, let's start with you. Where do you see this going in the call it 2 to 4 year future time horizon?
The future is technology, integrations, automation. I think a lot of that's going to include AI and getting that included, and that's way over my head. I think smarter people dealing with that than me. But getting those integrations up and running. But I think also in tandem with that, that's what everyone would say. It's technology. But I think the future is not losing the history either. We can't automate too much because this is a very emotional industry. And if we remove the human element, what are we? We're paper pushers. We're not meant to be paper pushers. We're meant to support beneficiaries, support employees when they're going through the worst moment of their life. And so I think making sure that there's going to be a return of the human element because it can never go away.
That's great. Paul, same question to you.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo what Hunt said. He kind of stole my idea. He said exactly what I was about to say. He probably said it better. But no, technology, AI, automation, absolutely important. But I actually think that there's going to be additional competition. That's something I see as the future. I see other companies, other industry, that are going to say, look, we're going to try our hands at insurance. So I think there's going to be additional competition. I wouldn't be surprised to see some technology companies be those companies that try to do that. And then again, we don't lose sight of that, but the human element, we still have to remember, what a typical claimant might be looking for. And again, sometimes that is an actual human to speak to say, look, what do I do next? I'm scared. I don't feel well. I need to get my claim submitted. How do I do it? And so we do need to have the technology, but I always say, companies, I think, will lose in the future if you try to hide behind technology, which a lot of places will. At this point, you need to meet it head on with the human element. So that's the biggest differentiator is companies balancing the fine line between, the customer service hands-on and having the technology, because we have a generational gap, right? We've got people like my 16-year-old who probably will never call anybody to ask them a question. It's going to be a complete text world, email world for them. It's not going to be for me or my parents. And so you just really have a unique set of people that you have to kind of balance. So,
Well, that's great. Yes, the world continues to evolve and the balancing act continues. But Paul and Hunt, thank you both so much for joining us. I think your insights were impactful. I certainly enjoyed them, and I'm sure that our audience did as well. With that, I'm going to wrap up the latest episode of the Working Forward podcast. So thanks again to Paul and Hunt, and thanks to all of you who joined in. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We've got some more great content hitting your podcast feed soon. We'll talk with you soon. Thanks so much.
You're listening to Working Forward, Future of Work podcast series. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Symetra Life Insurance Company or its affiliates.